So imagine a team of elite cybersecurity experts, right? They're studying this massive, um, highly complex network system.
Right, the kind of system that runs everything.
Exactly. And they patch it, they monitor it, they audit it for, well, 27 years, constantly looking for hidden flaws.
Yeah.
But then imagine a new entity sweeps into that exact same environment, and it just uncovers decades of lapsed vulnerabilities that those experts completely missed.
Oh, wow.
And it doesn't take 27 years to find them. It takes like seconds.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is that isn't some hypothetical scenario from a sci-fi novel.
Right.
That is exactly what Anthropic's new Mythos AI model just accomplished, which is heavily detailed in the sources for today's deep dive.
It's wild.
It really is. I mean, it parsed millions of lines of legacy architecture and exposed vulnerabilities that human oversight had missed for nearly 3 decades.
3 decades.
Yeah, it's a stark demonstration that these models, they aren't just processing information faster anymore. They're adapting, analyzing and uncovering patterns in ways the human brain simply cannot compete with.
And, if you are listening to this right now, whether you manage a supply chain or work in financial compliance, or even if you run a creative agency, that exact level of autonomous capability is, frankly, coming for your workflow.
Oh, absolutely.
The data from our source today, which is this April 2026 white paper from EON AI Ventures, it indicates a very real ticking clock.
Yeah, a fast one.
We are looking at a 6 to 18-month timeline before this Mythos-class superintelligence is just ubiquitous across every single competitor in your industry.
Which brings us to the core mission of our discussion today, really.
Okay, let's unpack this, because right now, businesses facing this AI wave are kind of like deer caught in the headlights.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and our goal today is to decode this new transition framework from EON, which is all about learning how to stop freezing and actually get behind the wheel and drive the car.
Right, because the sheer speed of this technological disruption has created this profound crisis.
It really has.
Organizations and individual workers are essentially paralyzed. They are terrified of instant skill obsolescence. But we don't just want to list the scary facts, right?
Right, exactly.
We need to understand why this transition is historically significant and why developing your critical thinking is basically your ultimate survival tool.
Let me jump in and play devil's advocate for a second here, though.
Sure.
Because I read that statistic in the white paper. The one stating that generic AI can now autonomously handle like 80% of human workflows.
Right, the 80% rule.
Yeah, and if I'm a CEO or, a department head looking at my budget, I am not paralyzed by that statistic. I'm ecstatic.
You'd think so, yeah.
Right. Like, why wouldn't a company just fire up the servers, plug this AI into their daily operations, automate that 80%, and just save millions of dollars today? Why the paralysis?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the frozen state of these companies isn't irrational. It's not just a fear of change.
Wait, really? It seems irrational from a purely financial standpoint.
I get that, but integration at this scale is not a simple plug-and-play operation. It's actually incredibly fragile.
Fragile how?
Well, it's tempting to look at that 80% figure and see this immediate revolution in efficiency, right?
Yeah.
But the remaining 20% of the workflow, it's not just leftover administrative busy work.
Okay.
That remaining 20% represents the absolute highest stakes of human judgment. It's the nuance, the strategic decision-making.
So it's kind of like having a massive jet engine bolted onto a standard bicycle.
Exactly.
If you don't have the right framework or infrastructure to handle that power, you're not going to fly, you're just going to crash spectacularly.
That is the perfect analogy, and if you think about it, generic AI delivers 80% quality, which is fine for drafting a basic email.
Right.
But what does that 20% gap actually look like in a high-stakes real-world enterprise?
Yeah, let's ground that. Give me an example.
Okay, think about a major hospital network's logistics and triage system.
Okay.
A generic AI can easily handle 80% of the workload. It can optimize shift schedules for hundreds of nurses, cross-reference pharmaceutical inventories, process intake forms flawlessly in milliseconds.
It's all the heavy lifting?
Right. But that remaining 20%, that involves deciding how to reallocate life-saving equipment during an unexpected localized crisis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, based on nuanced variables that might actually contradict standard protocol.
So if the AI gets a marketing campaign wrong, you just send a follow-up apology email.
Right.
But if the AI gets that 20% wrong in an ICU, people actually die.
Exactly the point. 80% quality is perfectly fine for consumer-level tasks. But in high-stakes environments, healthcare, financial compliance, aviation,
Hmm.
you require 100% precision.
And a machine can't guarantee that yet.
No, it can't. And the realization that is freezing these companies is that bolting this massive, super intelligent engine onto a static, unprepared workforce isn't going to make the company faster. It's just going to shatter the infrastructure.
Right. The fear makes total sense when you frame it like that.
You need a completely new methodology to handle the thrust of that engine, which actually explains why OpenAI recently called for a societal New Deal.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. That really bridges a huge gap for me. You just can't hand someone a jet engine and say, good luck, try not to crash.
Exactly.
And that leads us to the solution EON AI Ventures is actually proposing in this white paper. Because they aren't just, selling a software patch to force this integration.
No, not at all.
They are outlining this very deliberate four-step transition journey to build that required human judgment. And they start with what they call AI fluency.
Yes, the learn phase. It is the necessary foundation. But we should be really clear about what fluency means in this context.
Why? How has it changed?
Well, the definition has evolved massively. I mean, 2 years ago, fluency meant learning how to code in Python or, how to write these super complex algorithmic prompts.
Which is pretty ironic, considering coding is increasingly becoming something the AI just does for itself now.
Precisely. So in the EON framework, fluency is not about technical programming. It's about understanding the boundaries of the system.
Okay.
It's knowing exactly what the AI can do, and arguably more importantly, having a hyper-awareness of what it cannot do.
Right.
It involves an employee looking at their specific department and identifying the precise strategic areas where human expertise remains entirely irreplaceable.
So it's kind of like mapping the board before you start playing the game.
Exactly, mapping the boundaries.
But mapping the board doesn't mean you automatically know how to win. You still have to execute.
Right.
Which brings us to the core of this white paper, and honestly, the concept that completely rewired how I think about the future of work.
The training phase.
Yes. Here's where it gets really interesting. The EON framework moves from fluency into this training phase that focuses heavily on something called adversarial reasoning. Let's spend some time here because this is just fascinating.
It is, it's arguably the most critical survival skill mentioned in the entire document.
I'll say most critical.
I think so,
Yeah.
because for decades, we have been conditioned to treat computing systems like calculators.
Right, you type it in, you get the answer.
Exactly. You input a data set, you apply a formula, and you implicitly trust the output because the machine follows rigid logic.
Yeah.
Generative AI models fundamentally destroy that dynamic.
Because they hallucinate. I mean, they can generate completely fabricated information and present it to you with the absolute unwavering confidence of a seasoned expert.
Yes, exactly. They predict patterns, they don't possess innate truth. So adversarial reasoning requires a total shift in the worker's mindset.
How so?
Well, you are no longer the creator of the content. The AI creates the content. You are the ultimate combative skeptic of the content.
Oh, I like that. The combative skeptic.
Yeah. You are actively picking a fight with the AI's logic, probing its blind spots, anticipating where its training data might fail in a real-world scenario.
Can you give me a concrete example of that? Like, what does an employee utilizing adversarial reasoning look like compared to just a passive, normal employee?
Sure. Let's look at corporate financial compliance.
Okay.
Say an AI generates a comprehensive risk assessment for a new international merger, and it confidently cites a specific 2024 tax loophole as the legal basis for this highly profitable strategy.
Sounds great on paper.
Right. A generic worker, someone lacking that adversarial training, they see the professional formatting, they read the confident tone, and they just sign off on the merger.
And potentially walk the company right into a massive international lawsuit.
Exactly. But an adversarial worker approaches that exact same document entirely differently.
They don't just trust it.
No. They know that this specific AI model historically struggles with superseding regional laws, for instance.
Oh, interesting.
So they actively challenge the AI's premise. They specifically search for regional blind spots, and they discover that the cited loophole was actually quietly closed at the state level 3 months prior.
Wow. So they catch the catastrophic error and save the company from $1 million fine.
Yes, the adversarial worker is the safety net.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. You aren't doing the heavy lifting. You are providing the absolute precision that the machine fundamentally lacks.
Exactly.
But, okay, here is the massive operational hurdle I immediately see with this.
What's that?
How on earth does a company actually test for that? Like, if I am a hiring manager, how do I know you actually possess high-level adversarial reasoning and you didn't just, use another AI to help you pass my written aptitude test?
This raises an important question, right? The problem of verification in an age where AI can fake almost anything is basically the central bottleneck of the modern economy.
Yeah, how do you trust any resume anymore?
And this is where EON AI Ventures leverages what they call the EON Tribunal to verify these skills.
Right, the white paper mentions the tribunal uses multi-avatar XR technology for immersive verification.
Yes.
And I have to pause here, because when I hear XR or extended reality, my mind immediately goes to some HR department trying to force 500 employees to strap on clunky VR goggles in the break room to take a multiple choice test.
Right, the corporate metaverse
Yeah.
stereotype.
Exactly. How does this actually work in practice? Is it just a gimmick?
No, it is far more sophisticated than a novelty VR headset. You have to remember, EON Reality, the foundational company behind this venture, they bring 25 years of architectural experience in immersive learning.
Oh.
Long before AI was a daily headline, they were building complex spatial computing environments for aviation, for medicine, defense. The tribunal is an immersive, scenario-based simulation.
So it's essentially a high-stakes flight simulator, but for cognitive skills and AI management.
That is the perfect analogy,
Right.
yeah. When you need to verify that a pilot can handle a catastrophic engine failure in a thunderstorm, a written test is totally useless.
Right, you can't just ask them, what would you do?
Exactly. You put them in a live simulator where the environment reacts dynamically to their decisions. And the EON Tribunal does exactly this for adversarial reasoning.
Oh, wow.
It drops the worker into a live multi-avatar scenario where they are forced to outmaneuver, challenge, and correctly direct an AI while dealing with synthetic personas and constantly changing variables.
So it's an uncheatable credential then, because you literally can't run a background script to fake live reactive human judgment in real time.
Exactly.
You either know how to navigate the storm or you crash the simulator.
That's it. And once a worker survives the tribunal and they prove they have that judgment, they transition from merely learning how to govern AI into actually using it to generate economic value.
Which is the third step.
Right. The framework calls this the perform stage, and they utilize tools named the Venture Builder and Genesis.
I want to break those terms down a bit because Venture Builder and Genesis sound a little like polished corporate buzzwords to me.
Sure, they do.
What is a worker actually doing with these tools? Are they like building a startup?
Well, they are building deployable market-specific solutions. Genesis and the Venture Builder act as collaborative sandboxes equipped with swarms of autonomous AI agents.
Swarms.
Yeah, think of Genesis as a team of infinitely fast, highly capable junior developers, but they lack common sense or strategic direction.
Okay, so if I am a supply chain manager and I don't know the first thing about writing software code, how do I use that?
Well, you don't need to write the code. You use your newly verified adversarial reasoning to direct the agents.
Oh, I see.
So you identify a massive bottleneck in your shipping routes, right? You use the Venture Builder to instruct the Genesis agents to build a predictive analytical dashboard to solve it.
And the AI just does it.
The AI writes the code, structures the database, designs the interface. Your job is to aggressively govern that output.
There's that adversarial part again.
Exactly. You challenge the AI's assumptions about fuel costs, you correct its blind spots regarding international customs delays, and you ensure the final product meets that 100% precision standard required by enterprise operations.
So I'm essentially acting as the director of a digital workforce, creating a tangible product that solves a real market problem,
Yes.
which naturally leads us to the final and arguably most important phase of EON's transition framework, achieve.
The monetization phase.
Right, because let's be honest, upskilling is great, building solutions in a sandbox is great, but if it doesn't translate into a paycheck, a promotion, or measurable corporate revenue, the entire system kind of collapses.
Oh, the economics of upskilling are usually where these grand technological visions fall apart entirely.
Always.
But the EON framework directly connects these newly developed capabilities to tangible opportunities using platforms like the Career Compass and the EON Marketplace.
Now, I read the section on their financing model for this, which they call Impact Share, and I have to admit, it set off some alarm bells for me.
I can understand why.
Yeah, the white paper explicitly states that organizations and workers can access this entire end-to-end training and certification process for only 1% upfront.
1%, yes.
So what does this all mean? In the corporate software world, if something sounds too good to be true, it usually is. What is the catch here? Are companies locked into some predatory, decades-long back-end royalties? How does EON actually keep the lights on if this whole thing fails?
Your skepticism is warranted, but it misinterprets the mechanism.
Okay.
Impact share is not a predatory royalty scheme. It is a mechanism of total risk absorption. To understand why it's necessary, you really have to look at how broken traditional corporate training has become.
Broken how?
Well, historically, a company might spend, say, $5,000 per employee to send a division through a 6-month coding boot camp.
Right, happens all the time.
But by the time the curriculum is finished, the underlying technology has completely changed, rendering the training utterly obsolete.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The company eats that massive financial loss. The traditional model assumes technology sits still while you learn it.
Which it clearly is not doing anymore, given that Mythos-class AI is adapting in seconds.
Exactly. So impact share is essentially a deferred tuition model tied directly to verified economic generation.
I see.
By drastically lowering the initial capital requirement to 1%, EON removes the paralyzing financial friction for the company.
They're taking on the risk.
They are mathematically signaling absolute confidence that their marketplace will successfully match these certified adversarial thinkers to institutional buyers who desperately need them.
Right.
EON only realizes its full return on investment when the worker successfully monetizes their new skills in the real world.
That is a staggering indictment of the traditional education and corporate training sector.
It really is.
It is basically EON saying, we know traditional upskilling is far too risky for you to gamble your budget on right now, but we know the global demand for humans with verified adversarial reasoning is going to be so astronomically high that we will happily front the risk.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you realize EON AI Ventures is not positioning itself merely as an educational platform or a software vendor.
Right. It's bigger than that.
It is an end-to-end economic engine. It identifies the singular skill gap that threatens the modern enterprise, the critical need for human oversight of autonomous systems. It provides the rigorous, uncheatable XR simulation to train that skill, and then it instantly acts as the broker to monetize it.
Let's pull all of these threads together, though.
Sure.
We started by looking at a global workforce frozen like a deer in the headlights, staring down a 6 to 18-month timeline before hyper-advanced autonomous AI is deployed by every single competitor in the market.
A scary reality.
Very. And we established that while generic AI can automate 80% of tasks, it is the remaining 20%, that high-stakes human judgment, that prevents catastrophic enterprise failure.
And to safely cross that 20% gap, EON's framework maps out 4 actionable stages.
Right.
First, learning AI fluency so you understand the boundaries of the tech. Second, training your adversarial reasoning through those immersive, uncheatable environments of the EON tribunal.
That's flight simulator.
Yes. Third, performing real-world tasks by directing autonomous agents in the venture builder. And finally, achieving actual economic outcomes through the marketplace and the impact share model.
The core takeaway of this entire deep dive is perfectly captured in a quote from Dan Lidgerskar, the chairman of EON AI Ventures.
Oh, I love this quote.
Yeah, he stated in the release, "We're standing at a once-in-a-century inflection point. AI will soon be in the hands of every competitor across every domain. The difference between a workforce that watches and one that builds with AI begins with EON."
It is an inflection point that demands immediate action. For you, the listener, the vital takeaway is recognizing where your inherent professional value lies in this new era.
Because it's shifted.
Completely. The days of being compensated for how quickly you can execute routine tasks are effectively over.
Yeah.
Developing your human judgment, refining your capacity for critical evaluation, and mastering that combative, adversarial reasoning that is your only personal shield against obsolescence.
The machine does the work, you do the thinking.
The AI will provide the sheer power, the speed, and the coding. But only a highly trained human mind can provide the absolute precision, the context, and the critical governance required for high-stakes success.
Which leaves us with a pretty profound final thought to chew on.
What's that?
Well, if AI models like Mythos can autonomously sweep through a system and uncover 27 years of human errors in a matter of seconds,
Yeah.
and if the entire future of human upskilling revolves around mastering adversarial reasoning just to catch the machine's subtle mistakes,
Right.
will the ultimate future of human work simply be acting as the moral and critical brakes to an AI engine that never ever stops accelerating?
That's a heavy thought.
Are we essentially resigning as the engine of industry and instead becoming the steering wheel and the brakes,
Yeah.
just desperately trying to keep the car on the road as it breaks the sound barrier?
Wow.
It is something to seriously think about before that technology arrives at your desk.